Is anyone listening to Palestine? Or are they the forgotten victims of a forgotten persecution? Palestinian protesters held a silent vigil for justice after a photographer died following an attack by Israeli gunfire along Gaza's eastern border. He was killed while recording the March of Return protest at the border with Israel. He was wearing a vest imprinted with the word press on it, but died of his wounds in hospital. It is reported that 7 other journalists were also shot during the same protests. In a statement, the Israeli military said that it does not intend to shoot at journalists and is investigating the incident. It all happened during the March of Return campaign by Palestinians who are calling for the return of the land which is now claimed by Israel. Thousands attended a rally in Britain's capital, London, to express solidarity with Palestinian protesters in the Gaza Strip and condemn the Israeli regime's actions and the UK's inaction towards Israeli violence. Protesters gathered outside British Prime Minister Theresa May's residence to show their anger at the UK's silence regarding abuses against Palestinians. Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn also attacked Western inaction about Israel's killing of over 30 Palestinians during anti-occupation protests in the besieged Gaza Strip. Why has Israel used military force against a peaceful protest? And why has the usually vocal human rights lobby said so little about Israel's actions? Simple questions with important answers. At least 8 journalists have been shot by Israeli forces, although they wore a vest which clearly stated press. Why have the media been targeted by Israeli forces? We asked the public. Here's what they said.
Due to, I think, ignorance, mainly lack of awareness, clearly the policy with protecting journalists, I completely disagree with that.
Well, that's an unfortunate situation. We live in a world where things are becoming a lot more uncertain and difficult, and I think there's just so much chaos around the world, and it's quite unfortunate. And my condolences just go to the family of the shot journalist.
There are too many fractions if you think it's Palestine, the region of Gaza, and it's very. You have 2 fractions, one controlled by Mahmoud Abbas and the other region. I just think it's totally fractious, and there's no peaceful. I don't think there'll ever be a peaceful solution.
Well, I think Israel just has a very aggressive point of view about what they see as threats to themselves, and they will do anything to defend them.
Because we have the power that we can either manipulate to the public or we can tell the truth. That's the power we have within artists or even as a press. And I'm assuming they are more or less like, how can I say it? They're assuming like they're taking one side of the, the politic. So I think that's the reason, I believe.
I would say to avoid the truth, or to avoid what they've got to say, hide in agenda, how they say, So that's what I think, When you kill somebody for, it doesn't look like no reason, he's only doing his job, then you're hiding something.
Well, I think the Israelis are quite heavy-handed in the way that they deal with this sort of stuff. So it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. They'll target anybody.
We are coming to the realization, a devastating realization, that truth is the ultimate enemy of the Jewish state. For Israel to prevail, it must keep humanity in the dark. And this will work as long as humanity is happy to be kept in the dark. It is pretty devastating, but it is down to us to change it.
Yes, it was a deliberate killing. He was wearing this blue vest, which was very recognizable. It was an act of violence aimed at a civilian, because journalists are civilians. they should not be made the object of direct attack. So it was a criminal act, and even the extremist Avigdor Lieberman said that we were monitoring him because he was flying a drone. Whether true or not, I don't know. But I mean, that implies that they knew he was a journalist, they knew he was unarmed, they knew he was not doing a criminal act. And this was in the context of a peaceful, non-violent civil rights demonstration. So there was no armed resistance. So a journalist is someone who can actually spill the beans. We know about maybe the Israelis are worried about them Mustaribin, who are Jean provocateurs of Israel. They disguise themselves as Palestinians to carry out acts of violence and kidnap Palestinians. So maybe they were afraid that the journalists would keep an eye on those crimes.
Why, in the view of the public here in London, has Israel responded with deadly force to a peaceful protest?
Selfish reasons, I believe. They're trying to protect their own spaces, but completely unjustified and uncalled for. Once again, I stand against it.
I would imagine that the reason why anyone would actually want to use force is, maybe they haven't quite considered the other option, which could include communication, negotiations, and peaceful deliberations.
Well, again, Israel has a very dogmatic approach to what they see as a threat to themselves. And they don't differentiate between who's giving them that threat. So they will do whatever they think it takes to defend their right to have a state.
I think at the end it's all about power, isn't it? Everybody wants power and they just want to show whatever they are capable of doing. I think that's about it, really.
They have power all over the world, the Israeli, I would say, especially in a big country like America and England and France and stuff like that. So I think they have a power they overpowered any government in any country with their money, with their influence in politics.
I really don't know. I didn't know eight journalists had been shot dead.
Because that's the way the Israelis do it. They don't. There's no half measures. You know what you're getting into with the Israelis, and there's no black or it's very black and white. So yeah.
Because the right of return is the core of the Palestinian plight. It makes everything very simple. It puts Gaza in context. It puts Israeli racism in context. For many years, Jewish solidarity groups were working hard to deviate the Palestinian solidarity discourse from the right of return. We start to see issues like end of occupation, BDS, and so on and so on. Thanks to Donald Trump and his Jerusalem initiative, the Palestinians realized that they have to take care of their own liberation discourse, and Israel see it, the right of return, as a major obstacle. It must fight it. This is very simple.
Yes, it defies logic, doesn't it? But at the same time, it shows Israel is worried, because this march for return is drawing the world's attention to the plight of the Palestinians. All of a sudden, the Palestinian cause is back in the news, which is the Israelis hate, of course. So in a sense, it caused a rage by part of Israelis, and maybe it might even have been meant to deter what's going on, because of course there are going to be more events leading up to the 15th of May. And so the Israelis are trying to terrify the Palestinians. They don't come anywhere near here, because we killed, we slain 30 of you, we're going to kill even more. It's disproportionate, it's atrocious, it's criminal, but the Israelis always feel they're getting away with it, and that is what really makes me angry.
British Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn criticised Western inaction regarding the regime's killing of over 30 Palestinians during anti-occupation protests in the besieged Gaza Strip. Then the leader of the Israeli Labour Party said that he would cut all relations with Corbyn. What are the public's thoughts?
Again, it goes back against my moral values. I disagree with it.
Do you think that there should be more respect for Corbyn sticking up for the Palestinian cause there?
Absolutely, yes.
If you don't have any sort of deep understanding of anything, you don't sort of take any stance. But my opinion really is we live in a world where there seems to be a lot of defragmentation, and we have an opportunity to start to sort of reason together and unite, walk in peace, walk in love, and be an example to the coming generation. So that's what I think. And, you know, I think Jeremy Corbyn is an amazing gentleman. I admire him a lot, and I think he's done a great job at unifying the party he's championing.
I'm really not sure. I mean, I'm not. I've been following the Corbyn criticism about his views about Jews in the Labour Party, and I haven't really been able to form an opinion. I don't really know how to answer that, if I'm honest.
I mean, what action can Corbyn actually take? I don't know. I cannot see. I'm not a big fan of Corbyn, but I cannot see in this instance. I cannot see what action can Corbyn take. You know, the action has to go to come from the British government, not Corbyn. So I think Corbyn could hold his hand up here and say, his action. Okay, I can see what direct action Corbyn could take.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn has always been an honest person, as I know him. I'm from Finsbury Park, so he's from that region, and to me, it's very hard for him to be a politician because he's too honest to be a politician, and he's only fighting for the poor people. So yeah, he's not siding for anybody really. He's not a Muslim, and he's not Christian, and he's not. I don't know what he is anyway, but he's always fighting for what he thinks is right, and that's what the politician should really have. But that doesn't happen in our world. As a politician, always, even they are wrong, they just stubborn and they say we're right because that's what they think, so that's what they believe.
I actually believe that this is certainly Jeremy Corbyn's greatest achievement to date. The Israeli Labour Party is a racially oriented nationalist party. They are not socialists for many years, but when it comes to its roots, we are talking basically about a national socialist party. The idea that the Labour Party was connected with such a body was an embarrassment, and I'm very glad that the Labour Party is now emancipated. Thank you, Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, 2 points. I mean, the leader of the Labour Party is accusing Corbyn of anti-Semitism. He should first be concerned about the actions of his own government, which are disproportionate, which are target the innocent, the civilians. If anything is bound to cause anti-Semitism, that is it. Now, the second point is this. I'm afraid, I suspect the Israelis like to cause anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is what, in theory, should lead the Jews in the diaspora to go and live in Israel. They want all the Jews in the diaspora to go and live in Israel. All the Jews in the diaspora are doing very well. Why should they go there? When there was an attack on a synagogue in Paris years ago, Netanyahu went to Paris and invited all the French Jews to go and live in Israel. And Professor Cesarani, whom I knew, a distinguished Jew, said, Netanyahu is being very provocative. So this is anti-Semitism, which is in the interest of Israel.
On a single day, Friday the 13th, 2018, one Palestinian was killed and 968 others injured in Gaza, according to Palestinian health officials. CNN reported that 35 Palestinians had been killed in Gaza since the latest round of demonstrations began on March the 30th. And why are these demonstrations happening? Because in 1948, 700,000 Palestinians were forcibly displaced by Israeli forces. Why hasn't any country or major human rights organization taken direct action, including sanctions or boycotts, against Israel? Here's the public's opinion.
shocking, absolutely shocking. And I know that US is a big supporter of Israel. I've been to Israel, I've been to Palestine as well. I've seen those forces in action. Shocking. We impose such sanctions on Russia. Why not Israel?
I believe Israel might have taken the actions it's taken for its own, perhaps, reasons. So I think it's best to just sort of like, just keep pursuing peace. That's my stance in life, really.
Well, I think they need America to be on board with that, and the Jewish lobby in America is really strong, and I think that's the reason.
I've been working with this all of humanitarian stuff, and I think for me, as just another business, to be honest with you, there's nobody nowadays in 21st century, everybody's hungry for themselves. So they're just using even the charity, the human right, all that nonsense is just make profit, really.
The Israelis are very powerful in money and in politics, and in every country they have, in a big country, I'm saying, they have a big influence in that politics. So that's what I think,
I think it's just like it's a hornet's nest, isn't it? I mean, it's such a delicate situation where I think people are really stuck what to do, and they don't know what the right thing is to do.
No, you should always keep your friends close and your enemies closer still.
Okay, I think that it is quite clear. Human rights is an occupied zone. Why human rights is an occupied zone? Because Western politics is dominated by a variety of Jewish lobbies in the left and in the right. I define Jewish power as the power to suppress criticism of Jewish power. Human rights is obviously a prime victim of such a power. It is quite simple.
Well, some people say there's a sort of compassion fatigue vis-a-vis the Palestinians. They've been around, they're suffering such a long time, nothing is happening. But in fact, this sort of event is going to rekindle the world's attention. It is not, there are organizations, for example, Amnesty UK, which is carrying out a campaign in favor of disinvesting, but also boycotting goods from occupied territories. And I think personally that here we should be a bit more subtle. Targeting the whole of Israel is probably not very expedient, but certainly concentrating on the occupied territories, which are under international law, they are completely illegal. That should be a legitimate action. It should be increased. So in that sense, there is action going on. You should specifically target. But in a way, even the Arab League, shame of them. They're not really doing anything. They should.
If innocent protesters were to be shot dead in Europe today, would the international reaction be different compared to the reaction when Palestinians are killed? We asked the public.
That would be a complete uprise, and clearly there will be intervention from international communities and certainly NGOs and government as well. The fact that it is happening and no one is doing anything about it in this day and age, it's completely unacceptable. Lives are being lost.
Absolutely, absolutely. London is the center of the world, and I say that from financial perspective. Everybody's been to London. It is the heartland, is where the money is. This is if you look at Syria, why hasn't anything but done about Syria? Is because there's no natural resources. We haven't got to be naive about it. It's the same in Palestinian. It's going on for far too long. Nobody really cares. You might see a child dying or exactly, but it's just gone on for far too long. The focus has been lost.
I think people would perceive that initially as tragic and wrong and would want justice more so than they might if it was something that happened in the Middle East, not just in Palestine. I think there's a lot going on in Syria that people ignore as well.
I believe like the truth won't matter anymore these days. It's like who got the news out first. It doesn't matter if it's the truth or not. So that's the world. That's the world we live in right now. So I I think it would take some time, even if it's like it's innocent people.
As is the big countries, always if somebody shot in Iraq or something, or Iraqi or something, they bring him here and they take him to hospital and they show how good they are. And in the first place, they're the one who shot him. So it's very hypocritical when it comes to the politics. It's very hard to agree or disagree. They always find out the way to influence people because they have the big power, which is the media, and the small people hasn't got the media to tell people really what's going on.
Well, it depends on what the situation was, really. But I don't ever see that happening. I don't think if it did happen, I think there'd be a lot of international surprise at what happened. But yeah, there would be condemnation. So I think something would happen to be a lot more stronger than it would be in Palestine.
Witnessing the extensive Zionification of police forces and police methods in the West, I'm afraid to say that it is just a question of time before we start to see police forces and snipers shooting dissenters in the West. Again, it is down to us to stand up and say no to Zion, no to Israel, no to the Zionification of our Western life and values. It is down to us to change all of that.
Well, I mean, I even imagine even if Israelis went completely mad and started unleashing chemical weapons on the Palestinians and gas, at the end of the day, no world government would take the disproportionate reaction which the United States have taken towards Russia concerning Syria, or indeed the UK concerning the Salisbury. So we have outrageous double standards which cannot be justified because, I mean, people of Gaza especially, the people of Gaza especially, are human beings. They've been in prison for 10 years. There is a blockade. Even ships are not allowed to dock there. They're, to all intents and purposes, in a huge prison. You've got electricity cuts, the prisons of Israelis. And there should be, it should be quite clear that there is an intolerable situation. And if you can speak of nations have a conscience, the conscience of righteous nations should rise up and do something.
Protesters in London have called for an end to the Israeli regime's brutal blockade of the densely populated Gaza since 2007. The Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, as well as the Stop the War Coalition, were among several organisations sponsoring massive protests.
We are used to seeing human rights violations by the Israeli regime in the occupied territories against peaceful Palestinian protesters. Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader in Britain, has said the silence from international powers with the responsibility of bringing a just settlement of the Israel-Palestine conflict must end. Usually, almost nobody would disagree with such a statement. But when it comes to Palestine, almost nobody seems to be listening.